Hello, everyone. Welcome to our breakout session. This is called Mass Incarceration, Break Down Biases and Build Up Community, and we are the Inside Out Alliance from St. Louis University. I am going to get us started with a little activity, and then we are going to get into more introductions. So first, we wanted to start off with just a few reflection questions. So I'm going to read these for you, and you're welcome to write things down or just think about these to yourself and think about them as we are going through our breakout. So our first one is, my place of work or school is closed on major religious holidays. I can travel without others assuming that I put them at risk because of my religion, nor will my religion put me at risk from others when I travel. My citizenship and immigration status will likely not be questioned, and my background will likely not be investigated because of my religion. I do not have to consider my physical safety when I accept a date. My elected representatives are most likely people of my own sex. I can take a job or enroll in a college with an affirmative action policy without having my coworkers or peers assume I got it because of my race. If a police officer pulls me over, I can be sure that I haven't been singled out because of my race. I never have to worry about having an interpreter present in my classes or events that I attend. I can assume that I will easily have access to any building. I can be sure that my dietary needs will be met at most locations. Our next little part is going to be just doing some introductions for ourselves. So my name is Grace Canary. I'm a senior here at SLU and the president of the Inside Out Alliance. I'm also really involved in campus ministry. I'm an occupational therapy student, and I'm involved in our MICA program and do a lot of service on campus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Sarmiento. I am the vice president of IOA. I am from Dallas, Texas. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And other things I'm involved with on campus include the MICA program as well. And I'm heavily involved with the Student Government Association on campus, as well as other organizations.
Hey guys, I'm Michelle. I am the secretary for Inside Out Alliance. I am also an occupational therapy major, minoring in public health. I'm also in MICA, and I also work on campus. I'm involved in Chi Alpha, which is a Christian group on campus, and I'm a peer instructor, and also involved in like service opportunities. Yeah, we're going to move on to a little bit about IOA and the history of it.
So the history of IOA, the Inside Out Alliance was founded in 2012 in the Eastern Reception Diagnostic and Correctional Center, ERDCC, in Bonne Terre, with the goal of bringing SLU's Jesuit mission to life within the prison. Students involved with the IOA in Bonne Terre have organized service efforts within the prison and have worked with the prison education program to get speakers to SLU's incarcerated students. In 2018, students in SLU's main campus began a second chapter of the IOA, functioning as the out component of the organization. The St. Louis chapter of the Inside Out Alliance has the primary goal of bringing thoughtful dialogue on issues related to mass incarceration into focus. Since its start, the IOA has helped plan a Mass Incarceration Awareness Week in October, held an annual showing of the documentary 13, and hosted a showing of True Justice along with a panel discussion. In the spring of 2020, the IOA officially became a CSO, a student chartered organization. Starting in the summer of 2020, the IOA began to work with DPS, the Department of Public Safety, and other administrators to be advocates for a more productive and positive presence of the campus from DPS. The IOA will be holding engaging events and meetings throughout the 2020-2021 school year related to mass incarceration awareness. Both groups will work independently on separate goals and missions, as well as together to bring a sense of unity between the campuses. A little bit more on the prison education program. The prison program at St. Louis University is a Jesuit-inspired initiative that provides access to high-quality liberal arts education for people who are incarcerated and prison staff. Through the PEP, people who are incarcerated as well as employees of the prison are able to take SLU classes taught by SLU professors. One of the main ideas is to prepare the students for future college experiences. The goal of the PEP is to provide humanity classes to foster an appreciation for the arts, develop personal growth, and foster more human connection within the prison. The IOA chapter in Bonne Terre is part of the PEP and works to bring SLU's Jesuit mission of service into their own community.
Great. Yes, that was just a little bit about the prison education program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bonne Terre program, which is like the IOA chapter in the Bonne Terre Correctional Facility. So basically, that IOA program has been around since about 2012. They've held monthly meetings and weekly tutoring sessions for students pursuing their GED. And so since the St. Louis chapter started, there has been coordination between the two chapters on gathering signatures for legislation changes, different policy changes, and they have also been working on a children's book, which is aimed to help ease traumatic stressors children have faced. So that book is now in the publishing stages and they're waiting for funding for it. So a little bit about the goal of the St. Louis IOA chapter is that it was really to bridge the gap between the campus, the St. Louis campus, and the prison education program, because there is such a strong relationship between the two, but they're so separate in terms of like physical separation. So yeah, given the separation of the locations, there was really never a time to visit or meet with the students in person. And especially now with the global pandemic going on, we're just left feeling a little bit more disconnected because there's just not a lot of ways to communicate. And it's like communicating through multiple people to get answers and kind of communicate in that way. So yeah, since March of this year, the Bonne Terre program has been suspended, or they're suspended any visitation. So employees of the prison education program weren't really able to go in. And so it was just employees, and then obviously those of the people who are incarcerated. So yeah, there's just been a lot of limited communication. Like we said, they haven't been able to drop off supplies, and there's been limited gathering, especially because there has been a COVID outbreak within the prison, and so that kind of creates disconnect between the students who are actually incarcerated. Yeah, so right now, there's just been a lot of transitioning happening. They've started putting classes online and having access to that. But they have tablets, but there's like a restricted use on it. So it's not as comprehensive as would be preferred. So even though we're not like in person, like contacting with the students there, we are still communicating with the faculty that communicates with the students there. We've been trying to send monthly email updates on what's going on. Yeah, so one of our big goals is just to become more connected with each other and to foster a better community.
Awesome. So kind of going along with that on the same section, we have mentioned before that this was an initiative that was taken on to promote more connection between the students in our Bonne Terre IOA and the students on our main St. Louis campus. So the physical and social separation, as we mentioned, has been really, really difficult for us, and also points to that impact of mass incarceration and human dignity and connection that we're trying to foster and create a better connection with our club. And so this desire came from the students within Bonne Terre and was something that became a passion for our founding president, Amy Hennessy. And so she went through what was a 2-year process from becoming a probationary organization to an official chartered organization at SLU. She ended up working with 2 different faculty members in the PEP to complete all the necessary steps so that finally in this past spring of 2020, we became an official student organization. And so at that point, the new e-board, which is the 3 of us, had been elected, and we were able to start working in a full capacity as a student organization starting only in this summer. So I'm going to pass it off to Michelle to tell us a little bit more about like what we're doing right now at SLU.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. So yeah, basically a little bit about what's going on with IOA in 2020 has been heavily influenced by COVID and the restrictions due to that. So our primary way of meeting has now shifted to Zoom. So our events are virtual, our meetings are virtual, and so that has really led us to try to connect in different ways, and social media has been a huge part of that. And so we've been able to post a lot on social media and like consistent throughout the summer. That was something that we really prioritized just due to the climate of our world and our country in particular. And so we were able to give resources on how to be a better advocate for our, Black sisters and brothers who there's just a lot going on in our world. And so now during the school year, we have been able to post every Wednesday about action alerts, ways to like be a better advocate. We've been able to post about like St. Louis, like current St. Louis activists, to really build that idea of like there are activists in our community and you can be one as well. And then we've also been posting about historical activists every Wednesday. So we've been kind of rotating through that. Yeah, and then like I said, our events have been, we've only had one big event, and that was a showing of the 13th documentary, but we had a really good discussion in our recent general body meeting, and we felt like it was just a really cool way to enter into the conversation about the issue of mass incarceration, and people were really involved in that conversation, which was good. And then again, yeah, our meetings have been on Zoom, and we're just doing that monthly. But I'm just gonna pass it on now to Grace to talk a little bit about what we did over the summer.
Yeah, so over the summer, which we kind of have touched on a little bit before, with the overwhelming cases of police brutality and overt racism, we, as an e-board, felt called to take on the task of confronting systems of privilege and oppression within our own SLU community. And so as a part of this mission that we decided together to confront how our Department of Public Safety was being run on our campus. And so in order to do this, we reached out to SLU students to gain a backing and like support for the requests and the questions that we were sending to our DPS chief. And so we ended up having over 200 people support this initiative and sign our email sent to the DPS chief. And we were able to meet with him among other administrators in order to make our voices heard and to voice those demands. However, as change is very slow. And so as we have started this semester, there has been an overwhelming lack of communication from the chief of DPS and other administrators who were in that meeting. And we as an organization have been waiting and been sending countless emails, waiting a reply for a team to be formed. And so something that we were told is that a group of people were being put together to meet with us regularly, hopefully monthly, to hear our demands and our follow-up questions, and that has not come to fruition yet. And so we have been really frustrated with this. A huge lack of communication and a huge lack of help on their part was something that we are trying to work towards on our campus. However, we realize that that doesn't mean this lets us give up, and that we have to continue this work and await the follow-up and just keep pressing on and hoping to create that more lasting change on SLU's campus as opposed to something more fleeting. And so that kind of takes us into our involvement with other student organizations and movements on campus, which Vanessa is going to talk a little bit more about.
Absolutely. So no one ever plans to be involved. No one ever plans to, like, this is what I'm doing at this date when it comes to organizing or sudden organizing on campus. So with the climate on campus, as well as the climate in our country, as mentioned before, we knew we couldn't stay silent on any of the issues and the Black Lives Matter movement that was really re-engaging or firing back up this summer. Because being a Inside Out Alliance, a club for mass incarceration, to bring awareness to mass incarceration, it was something we need to speak on. Specifically the murder of Breonna Taylor. In addition to our work as an e-board and the events and everything that we've previously talked about, we helped create a student coalition this summer that is dedicated to forming connections between different student organizations across our campus. This group has grown to about 24 members. However, we have struggled to fulfill our mission with the ever-changing environment at SLU. We have continually emphasized the need to work together and have decentralized leadership so that our work can continue for several years. We have also emphasized the importance of being an actual ally to BIPOC or Black and Indigenous people of color in the community, and ensuring that our allyship and what we do isn't performative, which goes along with with knowing your why in advocacy work. On September 24th, after the indictment of the police officers that shot and killed Breonna Taylor was announced, students within the SLU community started to mourn and set up a chalk memorial at the clock tower, a center point to SLU's campus, a point on campus that not only attracts a lot of students and attention, but has its own historical meanings. The next morning, what could be seen at the clock tower was that someone had defaced the memorial with permanent marker on the actual clock tower, and students were attempting to clean up what had been done. A list of demands was then started with pen and paper, with students still feeling hurt in their hearts and dissatisfaction with the way things were being handled. So not only did students get up that morning and scrub the clock tower, but after having cleaned and brought attention to our administration about what had happened, there was still a lot of students that felt hurt and didn't want to go home with that hurt in their hearts. So students began to march up and down West Pine, the main road on campus. Students chanted and marched, gaining more momentum, more students joining. And the students also walked through all the floors of DeBerg, which is an administrative building on campus. The march ended with a 3-hour sit-in at Grand Crossing, which is a main intersection in between SLU's campuses, as well as just a main intersection in St. Louis generally. The sit-in was used to hear more of students' demands, as well as an open mic where students were able to come up, share their own personal experiences and stories. But the day didn't end there. While the students marched, students from the coalition mentioned earlier got together and planned out a community conversation and vigil to continue the conversation and give students another opportunity to express how they were feeling and tell their stories. At the vigil, there were several hundred students present, all socially distanced in every direction, there to listen and learn. We heard stories, calls to action, frustration, anger, and we heard the list of demands that came out of over 6 pages of student concerns. The memorial continued for several days, each day growing bigger and larger, with chalk spreading out from the clock tower onto the ground, sidewalks, and planters. Anything around that could be chalked was chalked. The list of demands itself was met with a meeting offer from our administration, all of which is still currently happening on our campus and is still being handled by administration as well as students. So how can you take this into your campus?
Yeah, so we are going to kind of move on to how to bring this to your campus and become a better advocate on your own campus. So we just have a few points of kind of advice given like what we have experienced as the Inside Out Alliance. And so we want to emphasize that it is really, really important to have the backing of a specific organization for this. And as you mentioned before, it was a really long process to become a certified student organization at SLU. And so when it was just Amy, our president, working on her own, it was really hard for her to hold events and to kind of get that advocacy piece of our club going, which just goes to show that doing something on your own and doing something with just one or two other people is really hard. But once you have the backing of an organization and members, it makes things a lot easier. And you can tell that you're not just doing this on your own or you're not the only one who cares. And so, kind of going along with this, even though we are a student organization, we do have funding from SLU. It is extremely possible to do lots of advocacy work without any sorts of funding. We mentioned we do a lot on social media given COVID and not being able to do a lot of things in person. And so we wanted to emphasize that like if you're starting small, that is definitely okay. There's more people than you think who want to learn about this, and more people who you think that are going to show up at your meetings are going to want to hear you out and hear your side of the story. And so you don't need to have funding to hold a meeting on Zoom. You just use your school Zoom account. You don't need to have funding to make an Instagram post. You can use Canva for that. And so it's just really important to remember that like getting discouraged is okay and it happens, but having a few other people, having that backing and knowing that you don't need to have a ton of money or a ton of funding to make a little difference on your campus is really important.
Additionally, connecting to the Jesuit mission of our school was really important and really helped with the idea of like being people forward with others and caring for a person holistically and entirely. That's a great mission to really that goes hand in hand with mass incarceration awareness and bringing education to incarcerated students. So tapping into these missions, Jesuit missions, as well as our school's personal missions, was really helpful to get people to join the organization or kind of promote the organization. We knew we would have interest through this as well. Another thing is flexibility. Nobody saw the pandemic coming and nobody knows what tomorrow is going to look like. We all live in a time of uncertainty, but that's just having plans, multiple plans, backup plans, ABC, all the way to Z, and you can start with numbers, plan 1, 2, 3. And just being flexible with your students, with your peers, and all the club members, finding different ways to put on events. For example, we spoke about our 13th showing. We did that through Netflix and like Netflix party, or there's other things that you can use. There's cast and like other ways to show. And then we just hopped on Zoom a couple of days later to talk about it, to have a discussion. And with this is advertising. We mentioned a lot that we use social media to promote advocacy, to promote events, to promote different things. But in order to become a student organization, you have to show that there are students interested, and social media is a great way to use that. In our day and age, social media is used by so many people. There's Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that can be used to promote your organization and really tell people like, hey, we're here. And it's very easy to just share with friends. And so we have our own social media page, but we always share our posts onto our personals and send them to friends and invite friends to share them as well. And that's a great way to get word of mouth out without being in person. So that's definitely a great thing to work with. Also, focusing your work on campus versus in your city's community. As college students or as people within the university, it's easy to focus on campus, or it's important to also focus on campus, seeing as this is our everyday life, this is the people around us, this is our daily interactions. So having this focus on campus is very important to promote awareness to the students around us, but also having cities community focus. We do this through highlighting different St. Louis activists that are around, and that really gives our members and students access to more resources that we might not have or might not have yet, as well as helping us engage with the St. Louis community, especially now during a pandemic, without having to be in person together in the same space.
And then to continue off of that, one of the really big important things is that every perspective and story is so welcome. I mean, that's like the beauty of having student groups, engaging with people on campus. You know, being an advocate is to understand people's stories and to welcome that. And that is what makes you stronger. And not one person is going to know the answer to everything. We all have areas to grow in. And I think that's so important to really depend on everyone else in this fight for change and for to become better advocates. So that's a really big part of it. And then intersectionality of this with other social justice advocacy and balancing that work is so important. So as we explained earlier, like we took on the initiative to address DPS on our campus, and that isn't like directly focused with mass incarceration, but it connects to a lot of aspects that go into mass incarceration, and it's so important to address those other issues because mass incarceration isn't just like in its own. There's other things that create it, and there's other things that need to be addressed. It's not just one specific issue, and so it's important to look into that, but it's also important to focus on balancing it because you can't address every problem all at once as well. So it's finding that good balance of realizing the importance and the world around you, what's going on, taking on that initiative based on what's going on, but also keeping that tight focus, which for us is mass incarceration, but whatever that may be for your group. And then just another thing that we've mentioned is making connections with other student groups. That's been so huge in being able to take on the vigil that we had, protest that was all in response to or with response from a lot of groups on campus, and so also our student coalition group. That's been so cool to first of all connect with other people, to get to know more people and what they're passionate about, but also to realize that we have a strong base of community to go through these challenging things together and to really create that change. And having that big community does help have more influence in terms of talking to high up people, your administration at your school. Having that big support is something that's an amazing thing. So that kind of wraps up our main points on how to take it to your campus. But we wanted to leave you with just, if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please contact us. Our email is insideout@slu.edu. Our Instagram is @SLU_InsideOut. And again, we post a lot on there, so please check that out. Our Facebook is Inside Out Alliance, the St. Louis chapter. And then another thing, if you do have any questions about the email that we sent to DPS, and if you want a template, reach out. Any questions about social media, how we do that, reach out. Just if you have any questions, we'd love to connect.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Michelle. I know this is live right now too, so we'll be on for a little more as well for any questions or comments. But thank you all so much for listening to our breakout session. We hope this was really helpful and informative. We hope you enjoy the rest of the teach-in.